We have the presidential debate on foreign policy coming up tonight, and there's very little difference between these two and who their advisors are. So we're going to be getting into more of that. But don't worry, in most polls, Mitt Romney has pulled ahead, but there's electronic voting fraud. But even if he ended up getting in, he's, again, controlled by the very same crony capitalist apparatus. And, of course, the Hill also reports the UN to monitor U.S. elections, but not for electronic voting fraud, the big kahuna, but for retail-type stuff. If people try to stop the grassroots fraud, of course, LEW ROCKWELL, head of the von Mises Institute, and he is also former chief of staff for Ron Paul, LewRockwell.com, syndicated columnist. He can speak to all of these things. I want to cover a laundry list with LEW ROCKWELL, who was kind enough to come on with us today. Lew, so much going on. I mean, obviously, you're not a fan of Romney or Obama, but do you have any views on how either one of these guys and the power structures behind them, I mean, really different arms of the same ogre, but I mean, I understand you've divorced yourself from this corrupt system, never been part of it, but I mean, if you had to take one of these poisons, would you have a flavor that would be less nauseous?
No, I don't think so, Alex. I mean, it seems to me that, for example, Romney is just slightly more of a warmonger than Obama. Now, it's difficult to be more of a warmonger than Obama, but I think he's slightly more likely to nuke Iran, which is what some people want him to do, and commit other kinds of war crimes. On the other hand, of course, Obama has not ended the war in Iraq. It's still going on with a vast number of U.S. mercenaries there and still troops, and of course all these vast occupation embassies and consulates all over the country full of spies and troops. That's still going on. Of course, the Afghanistan war is going on. Obama bombed Libya. He's bringing about the destruction of Syria. That's all a U.S., Turkey, Israeli, British, French operation in Syria. This didn't just happen. But I think Romney is likely to be worse. Is Obama slightly worse on economics? I don't know. I mean, the government grows just as fast under the Republicans as it does under the Democrats, maybe faster sometimes under the Republicans as under George W. Bush. Of course, Obama's worse than Bush. Will Obama 2 be worse than Obama 1? Will Romney be worse than Obama 1? I would say yes. So, you can't, all you can do when you're faced with the choice of these two evils is just, don't participate. Don't take either flavor of the poison, abstain from the poison, don't vote, and then you have no responsibility for what these creeps are going to do to us.
So I get your point. Buying into the whole two-party, one-body dictatorship almost lends credibility to it. But I do think locally, where you have 8% turnout nationwide, people should get in to sabotage, the bureaucrats, to expose corruption, to kind of do what Ron Paul has done and act as a watchdog. Well, I think Ron Paul, of course, is an exception. I mean, here's a man who, and I'll tell you why he's an exception. Not only does he have the right principles, which of course is essential, but he's not power mad. He's not power hungry. He doesn't actually want to run anybody else's life. So that sets him apart from all these creeps in Washington, all the creeps that want to go to Washington, presidents and all the, and town councilmen and mayors too. They're all like this. They all want to run other people's lives. So if we, Ron Paul's different. Whether, voting, I mean, as you know, I'm a skeptic about voting. Unless the election's decided by one vote, your vote doesn't count. Now, so why to go to the trouble, go to some horrible socialist public school or some commie church or whatever they hold these voting, the voting machines at? And as you say, you can't believe the results anyway. We know there's electronic hacking. We know that there's old-fashioned vote stealing. Mayor didn't start or end with Mayor Daley. I mean, this is the normal thing in American politics, as it is every place. Well, LEW ROCKWELL, let me bring this up to you. Don't do it. This is the important question I have in this area for you. Undoubtedly, there are cycles in history, and we are entering a very, very decadent cycle. Disagree with me if you don't think that's the case. And I am now seeing things that even I can't believe. I mean, we get new footage every few days of police telling quadriplegics to walk and then beating them when they don't. And then the police department says, well, you should have followed the order. Or we see a teacher uploads pictures of her breasts to the class computer, the kids get expelled. We see the TSA now at highway checkpoints groping people. We see an article at LEWROCKWELL.com right here. Why you need a passport now, saying they'll just deny anybody a passport they want for no reason. And then that dovetails with Wall Street Journal admitting there's not even a law, but they're not letting Americans who have after-tax money and can prove it to leave with any money. Again, I was told that about some very wealthy people a few years ago, that they had to get out now. That was coming. Here's the Associated Press. A guy was a prepper. They looked at his website. He was flying out of Hawaii to see his wife in Japan. They wouldn't let him fly. No judge, no jury. They've said they're going to put you on a no-gun buy list, too. That's AP. We have, all of these reports where the IRS wanted a law this year where if they say you haven't paid taxes, no judge, no jury, then you can't leave the country, or they say you can't come back in. And now they're just saying they're going to do it as a bureaucracy through Homeland Security without a law. That's Fox News. Senators say if you leave the country with money, even legally, you can't come back. That's ABC News. So I'm showing these. Is this not the ultimate sign of an authoritarian takeover when, in every case in history, they put capital controls on? I mean, this is the final cherry on top.
Alex, you've been fighting this stuff for years. I have too. The speed of it is I must say, slightly astounding, as you're pointing out. But yeah, they do the capital controls. They want to prevent you from taking your money out of the country. And this is your own earnestly owned money, or earned money you've paid taxes on, you've been already looted on. And it began when you could no longer take money of more than $10,000 with you out of the country on an airplane. That was some years ago. And, they want to crack down. Now they're confiscating people's money with less than $10,000 if they have it on their person.
That's what the TSA is. They're even taking 1,000. They're even taking 5 or 6 silver coins, and they put it on the news. Today, 2,000 was found, and the guy apologizes, and they take it.
That's right. And then you have to appeal to get it back, and good luck to you. Because, of course, the government takes this sort of thing. It's the local police as well.
These are crazy robbers. We've now arrived at total tyranny, except for shutting down the media, and now they're talking about that.
Well, as Murray Rothbard said, you always think about the government as a gang of thieves writ large. And if you think about the government that way, then actually none of this stuff surprises you. What's happened, I mean, every government sort of has the ambition to be a totalitarian state. They'd all like to be Nazis or communists if they could get away with it. But public pressure prevents them from doing so. But ever since 9/11 and this whole unlimited forever war on terror where there's an incorporeal enemy, I mean, the enemy doesn't even, is an idea giving them, permanent authority to run our lives, control us, take our money, feel us up, do everything they want to us. Once that's arrived, yes, you're right. We're already an authoritarian state. We're headed towards a totalitarian state.
Isn't this really a will to power? Because we've had corrupt elites before, but they like due process to protect themselves. Hollywood's selling all these anti-liberty, anti-family messages, anti-God. The police are held up if they're more brutal. I mean, doesn't the power structure realize that they're building a system that will end up being used against them? I mean, it seems like a will to power madness, an orgy of control freak nobodies, just going towards this bloodbath.
Alex, you're exactly right. It's like the ancient fable of the scorpion and the frog. The scorpion encourages the frog to take him across the stream, and the frog's afraid he's going to hurt him. He says, no, I won't hurt you. After all, it would hurt me, too. So they get out in the middle of the stream. The scorpion stings the frog, and he's drowning, and they're both going to drown. He says, why did you do it? And he says, well, it's my nature. Well, it's the nature of the people who go into politics, who are members of the power elite, who want nothing more than to rule other people. What they want is power. They can get money, they can get other things when they have the power. They want the power. They're desperate for the power. They're demonic. I mean, they're criminals, and they feel that they've got right now. They feel they're making this move. It's not only, of course, in the United States. It's in Europe. It's all over the world where these people are making a move for a world totalitarian state, and it's happening right before our eyes. And as you say, the news is quite extraordinary. But I think also more and more people are waking up. You're helping wake up people. More and more people are waking up. So it's the constant struggle that's always existed throughout all of human history between power and market, between liberty and government. So sometimes the government gets ahead, and they have what they wanted in ancient Egypt, where the pharaoh, the government was actually God, which is what they really would like. They would actually like us to worship them as gods. So, but sometimes liberty gets ahead too. So this is a constant battle going back and forth. Right now, there's no question, power has been in the ascendancy like I haven't seen it on a worldwide basis, certainly in my lifetime. But the people are fighting back. More and more people are learning. That's the key. You have to learn about what's going on. You can't just turn your head. You can't ignore it. You can't avert your eyes. That's giving power to all the evil forces in the world. So we have to be involved. First of all, we have to learn what's going on. That's why your program is so valuable, of course.
There are a lot of people out there that do feel helpless, but you talk about market power, which is really the individual voting with one of the few things we've got left to vote with. That's why the system craves these controlled markets. Michelle Obama telling us what we can eat. 15 years ago, 20 years ago, you couldn't find organic food on store shelves. People were willing to pay for it, so it created a market. Now they're trying to come in with fraudulent organic, but that's going to happen. Slavery in 1860, most people were either for it or tacitly supported it. 65 years later, it was outlawed, or 67 years later, it was outlawed. Marijuana laws, 30, 40 years ago, they'd give you life in prison in places like Texas if you had one marijuana cigarette. Now, the police themselves know it's a fraud, so they catch somebody with it, they just let them go because they know it's a joke. There's so many hundreds of examples of where people just stop complying and get it and understand that what's going on is wrong, and that self-preservation for everybody means that we all start, even people in the system, just dragging our feet, not going along with it, saying no to the TSA, saying no to new taxes, saying no to new bureaucracies, getting in the face of the nanny state. I mean, what can you say about voting with our dollars and the power people have if they will simply vote with their dollars, and some examples of that?
Well, also, we should vote with our literal dollars. We should always, to the extent we can, always use cash. Get cash out of the bank, and that hurts the banks, by the way. Get your cash out of the banks and spend it. They hate it. But it's something that it harms the whole banking Federal Reserve.
Oh, I've tried to get $1,000 out and they act like I'm a criminal. They won't take 50s now at major stores. No,
if you try to get $1,000, it's absolutely true. I recommend it to everybody. When you want to get $1,000 out of your own money out of the bank, you're a bank robber. I mean, they hate you. So there's proof, by the way, you should be doing it. So yeah, and we could just look at this medium that we're talking on right now, the internet. I mean, there's no doubt in anybody's mind, if the government had known what the internet was going to be, they would have outlawed it. And of course, right now they're attacking it in many ways.
Senator Rockefeller said that a few years ago in the Senate.
Well, and Hillary Clinton said there should be government gatekeepers to decide who can get on the internet and so forth. But the internet outran the government, because the one thing we always have to remember about government, it's a very stupid institution. I think of it as like a huge blind dog. It's got vicious teeth. If one of the paws steps on you, you're dead. So it's very, very dangerous. But it's a stupid operation, and it's possible to outrun it. The market outruns it all the time. And the internet is doing it. So they're trying to hinder the internet. They're doing many things, but the internet, people in the millions and millions, hundreds of millions of people involved in the internet at one level or another are fighting back. And I was delighted to see that Kim.com, the great internet entrepreneur in New Zealand, who was arrested by a SWAT team and now has been released because he lives in New Zealand, a freer country than this one, is going to come out with a new version of his mega upload site, and it's driving the U.S. crazy. I also noticed that Britain, for example, there's been a poor kid with Asperger's that the U.S. has been trying to extradite from Britain for 10 years. They want to put him in one of these federal high security solitary prisons for the rest of his life, for the crime of having gone and looking for information on UFOs in the NASA computers. And of course, actually for the crime of showing them up and showing that they have.
And I've heard him interviewed, and he obviously is kind of an idiot savant, autistic. I mean, are we going to put the Rain Man in jail?
I want to say God bless his mother. You know, his mother is the one who's fought for him all these years and really is responsible for the fact that even the Cameron government, which is a tool of the U.S., finally refused to extradite him. They're not going to allow him to be extradited. So there are good things happening in the world as heroes, like this kid's mother, and all the people who are fighting for freedom on the internet and in markets. I always think, I always hear people saying when somebody's been in the military, thank you for your service. Well, Alex, I thank you for your service. I thank all the business people for their service, all the people on the internet, all the people fighting for freedom. They're the ones I want to thank for their service.
And that was my next question.
They tend not to be employed by the government, by the way.
Exactly. What do you make of the incredible disconnect that Obama would actually give a speech explaining how entrepreneurs didn't build it, when anyone with half a brain knows entrepreneurs are the spark of civilization?
Well, I sometimes think that Obama is a boob as well as a fascist, socialist, whatever his ideology. I mean, he just got away. He said something that actually hurt himself, got away from him. But that, of course, gave us a peek into his real view. I don't believe, by the way, that Romney's any different. And Romney may be smarter and more successful in private life than certainly Obama ever was. But Romney's a fascist too. So I don't believe that these guys. The power elite, the oligarchs, the plutocrats, even though they hold vast business interests, they don't like new entrepreneurs either. They do everything they can through tax policy, other government regulations, to crush the new entrepreneurs who would be competitors to them. So this is the Republicans have this view too. But I was glad Obama said that, because it revealed a piece of his mind and a piece of his heart to everybody who wants to see it.
Well, it also shows from every Soviet or fascistic model, from Nazi Germany to later East Germany to Russia to China, the true movie, the Lives of Others, where it shows the East Germans controlling what playwrights can write. And if you want to be an actress, you've got to have sex with the local police commandant. That's what authoritarianism is they get to then dominate the artists, the thinkers. They get to tell us we didn't build anything. They get to tell us what they want. They're obsessed with controlling the spark of truly dynamic humans that makes them so angry. People that are really successful, we're going to be successful because we have talent and energy, and it's embarrassing to us to dominate someone. We want to empower people. When will good people start standing up and crushing the control freak slugs?
But this is actually nothing new in the history of government. Caesar Augustus, paid the best poets of his time, Virgil and Horace and Livy and the historians, to write pro-government propaganda. These are very talented people, and they did some very effective government propaganda. So this is, then and now. But we have, of course, the U.S. government today. Forget Caesar Augustus or Hitler or Stalin or anything. This is the biggest, most powerful government in the history of the world. So to get a hold of this government, which has which wants to be the world government, is a much more dangerous thing.
Insider billionaire investors like George Soros and John Paulson have recently made massive moves into gold, purchasing what Bloomberg News described as gold hoards. Soros alone doubled his holdings in a single day. Russia's Vladimir Putin has doubled down on gold, increasing the country's holdings by over 100%, with $1.8 trillion under management. The bond king, Bill Gross, the world's preeminent bond fund manager at PIMCO, has warned investors of the dangers of QE3 and inflation. And what's he betting on? You guessed it, gold. Friends, this is Alex Jones for MidasResources.com. For more than 15 years, I have exclusively used Midas Resources for all my precious metal needs. Whether it's bullion or collectibles you're looking for, Midas Resources is simply the best. I own my gold as a hedge against inflation. This Federal Reserve fiat currency could go the way of the Deutschmark and the Weimar Republic anytime. In these historically dangerous times, it makes sense to physically hold gold and silver. Midas already has some of the best deals in the industry. But if you give them a call and mention the radio special, they will give you a list of the day's super specials. Midas brokers are standing by to answer all your questions at 800-686-2237. They also have a lot of informative free literature explaining the opportunities and risk of holding precious metals. They are ready to answer your questions at 800-686-2237. Again, that's 800-686-2237. See, government wants to put out all these TV shows and movies. Have you noticed all the new ones? Where the patriots, the gun owners are the terrorists, and Homeland Security's got to get them. Right as they say, oh, it was never about Al-Qaeda. It was about the American people. I want to cover a laundry list of things with Lew Rockwell in the time we have. I'm jumping in a lot because everything he says sparks like 100 thoughts I'm having and vice versa. If you want to talk to Lew Rockwell, 800-259-9231. We'll take a few calls before he leaves us. 800-259-9231. Questions specifically for him. LewRockwell.com. Amazing website. We link to their stories pretty much every day. It's a must place to visit on the internet every day, just like drudgereport.com and others. Lew, you were starting to get to America wanting to be the world government and the mega banks that are in control of it wanting to be at the center of that power structure. And this is the Pax Americana. They're going forward with it. And they are butchering every known form of liberty and then publicly using al-Qaeda in Libya and Syria. And then Hillary comes out and says 2 weeks ago, we've got to invade Syria with boots on the ground because they're with al-Qaeda. And then, oh, Iran's with al-Qaeda when the West runs al-Qaeda and is funding them. I mean, and we've got to give our rights up because of al-Qaeda. I mean, it is so over the top that I don't even know what to say. It's so crazy. I mean, I don't think I've ever seen government get into more of a delusional state where nothing even matches up. But more and more, I think that's part of the tactic to just get everybody used to this absurdist Alice in Wonderland Tea Party type deal.
I remember Gerhard Niemeyer, who was a great political science professor at Notre Dame, talking about in the Soviet Union what sort of an effect it had. The official lies has an effect on people to keep hearing the truth. These lies promulgated as truth. It just has a bad effect. Now, in the Soviet Union, they didn't have, of course, what we have in this country. We still have a free media. We still have free websites. We still have free publications that tell the truth. But yeah, they lie. Always assume they're lying, by the way. Once in a while they tell the truth. It's very, very seldom. Look at, as you say, Hillary. The U.S. has been training al-Qaeda in its Turkish Air Force bases for a couple of years before they sent them into Syria as the quote-unquote rebels. So these are guys from Chechnya. They're from various Arab countries, from North Africa. Many of them are al-Qaeda, which is, of course, if we don't look at it as a group that was formed by the U.S. and the Saudis and Osama bin Laden and so forth to fight the Russians in Afghanistan, it's a ideological tendency. It's not an organization. And there are some of these people who belong to that ideological tendency, that sort of Islamist tendency. U.S. has trained them, armed them, sent them in, and continues to arm them, sent them into Syria to overthrow the last secular Arab government in the Arab world, the one non-Islamist government. Now, why is the U.S. doing that? Well, there are a number of reasons. It has to do with, of course, the empire. They want to control all oil. They want to control the entire Middle East. But they want to cause trouble. I mean, this is what the Romans were open about when they said to divide and conquer, to cause conflict, and then enable them to conquer and to rule. So the U.S. loves it when al-Qaeda gets active in, quote-unquote al-Qaeda, active in Libya or in Syria or whatever. They want trouble. They want to break up all these countries. They want to destroy them, and so that the U.S. and its allies can rule.
But
and
it's
can also
so
prevent
weird.
the oil from getting to anybody they don't want it to get to.
Exactly. It's so weird to hear that, you know, my wife needs to be drug off to a private room to be grabbed on by somebody, or my kids do, or out in the open because al-Qaeda. And I've just gotten to the point with the TSA, I'm going to make, you know, it known that I know this is all a hoax. And now TSA agents come out and say, we're all stealing. I stole $1 million in 1 year. I mean, it's just like, because who would want a job dominating and yelling at people all day?
Well, of course, there are people like that. And they go into government and they rise to the top. There are people who like torturing other people. They're like people who are imprisoning other people. There are people who like beating up. There are people who like dominating and ruling. So this is the government. So it's why we want the smallest government possible. We want the least intrusive government possible, because these are bad people. These are not public servants. I'm not talking about every school teacher or postman. Obviously, there are decent people who work for the government. But the people who rise within the government, the people who get to be Janet Napolitano or whatever, these people are 100% evil. 100%. So if you don't want more of that kind of stuff, and of course this business of the feel up in the airports has nothing to do with quote unquote security. It has to do with making you humiliated, making you obey, so that they can do anything to you, your wife, your children, anything, and you have to like it and smile at them and say, yes, sir. That's the purpose of that. And of course, they want to extend that through society. They like all of society to be like one of these airports where one day you're supposed to look them in the eye, and if you don't look them in the eye, you're a terrorist. Another day, if you look them in the eye, you're a terrorist. You know, they keep switching their little protocols. So they want the whole country like the airport, but the uniformed thugs are ordering us around. And, you know, whether we call them the Stasis or the SS or the SA or the SD or the KGB or the NKVD, or there are people who love this kind of stuff and are happy to go to work for the government and to rise within the government. Good people do not rise within the government. Just look at what happened to Ron Paul. How wonderful he got to be a congressman, but when he tried to run for Senate, or of course when he tried to run for president, they stole the votes from him. They did everything possible to crush him and keep him out. And proof, of course, more proof that Ron Paul is a great man.
Yeah, you know, I've known Rand Paul for about 16 years, and I like a lot of things he stands for. He's one of the best people in the Senate, but some of his underlings and people, you know, I've seen reports out, some of the Campaign for Liberty people saying, hey, we shouldn't criticize the Bilderberg group like Alex Jones. Well, Ron Paul is where I learned about the Bilderberg group 20 years ago. So what's strange is that we see almost a attempt to get into Campaign for Liberty and all this, and then I don't want to be negative, you know, but I'm not going to sit here and watch something I helped build be infested by neocons. And I know Ron Paul's come out and said he's not going to endorse Romney, and I know that Rand has backed off some of his war stuff. I mean, listen, I'm not trying to bring up dirty laundry here, but I mean, you were Ron Paul's chief of staff. Have you had any little a bad taste in your mouth or anything about some of the things we've seen in and around Rand Paul?
Well, I think, you know, I must say I don't follow the other politicians. Ron Paul was I despise politics, even though I was once in regular politics before going straight. Ron Paul is, you know, my one exception, so I tend not to follow other politicians. I don't do it.
It's just to hear some of the Campaign for Liberty, some of Rand Paul people going, this is how we win. We merge with the Republicans. No, this is how we get co-opted. And so I guess that's why you don't have anything to do with it, because I guess that's where it leads.
The Republican Party is, of course, a corrupt and evil organization, just like the Democratic Party. I mean, they have different interest groups associated with them. They have different rhetoric, but there's no difference between them. And of course, we should be concerned with groups like the Bilderbergers or the Council on Foreign Relations or the Trilateral Commission or all these groups. When the power elite gets together for a secret meeting to talk about what our future ought to be, yeah, we ought to be concerned. And of course, you've been great about following these people. And trying to find out what they're saying, what they're planning, who belongs. It's very useful information. It doesn't mean that they're running the world, but they're part of the apparatus. No question that they're part of the. Well, sure, they're meeting with government.
They're meeting with government to try to get government to give them sweetheart deals, and that's why there's a problem. But it's worse than that. It's that when we used to point it out, the media said it didn't exist, and we were crazy. So see, that's the big issue. We've forced this out in the open. Ron Paul, yourself, myself, and many others. And now that we've won that fight, that there are shadowy corporate crony capitalists who work with government, who are our arch enemy, now we're being lectured, well, okay, we should work with Bilderberg. You know, I mean, that's the type of stuff coming out.
Well, you know, I mentioned earlier that the government is a stupid organization. The people who aren't stupid, however, are these private interests, the power elite, the big banking families, the big industrial families, the plutocrats, you know, Soros, Kochs, and so forth. These families are very smart. And they're able to make use of government to their own benefit. It also massively grows the government and hurts the rest of us. But you know what? They couldn't care less because they're in it for money and power. And so that's, you know, that's the way they operate. But we have to be concerned, and we have to be concerned about these power elite groups. And it gives us a peek. Very power elite analysis, as Murray Rothbard always called it, is just essential to look at. Other people would call it conspiracy theorizing, but to look at who these groups are, what they're trying to achieve, the government officials they work with against the rest of us. It's very, very important. And it again doesn't tell us everything, but it gives us a peek into their evil nature, and maybe gives us a hint about what they're planning. And to the extent we can have hints about what they're planning, it helps us to to refute and to defeat what they're trying to do to us.
Well, I mean, look, they're saying we want a managed economy. We're going to pick winners and losers. and that is the antithesis of a free society. And as David Rockefeller's grandpa said, competition is a sin. John D. Rockefeller, and he said that over and over again in newspaper interviews, they want monopolies. And the Republican Party will never talk about that. The Democrats think all business is bad. The Republicans say, oh, it's all good, let it do whatever it wants. Well, no, it's not good if it comes in and puts regulations in that it's exempt to shut down its competition. I mean, it's so elementary. Let me ask you this, and then we're going to get into some of the other news topics and find out what's on your mind before we take a few calls. Lew Rockwell, where do you see all this going? I mean, if you have to stare out into the future with your considerable economic and historical research and gravitas, I mean, I read your writings every week, and astounding insight, and from all the amazing people you've worked with over the years, where do you see us going? I understand it's fluid. We're deciding the future ourselves, but seeing the current formations, obviously big conflict between liberty and tyranny, it's coming to a head, but where do you see it going if we don't defeat these people versus if we did kind of win the day? Because there have been times in history when we can get a grassroots brush fire to go where people really reject and kind of vomit out the control freak government demon.
That's right, because they are a minority. They're a small minority. We are the vast majority. Think of us as a big friendly dog that's got a bunch of fleas on it. We are capable of scratching the fleas off, and they are just fleas as compared to the big friendly dog of the people. So it is possible to do it, but what do I see coming? I'm afraid we see more war. It looks like they want to go to war against Iran. They keep Obama as well as Romney as well as George W. Bush keep saying nothing is off the table when we go to war against Iran. What they're saying is we're prepared to nuke them. We're prepared to kill millions of people. And of course, they've never forgiven Iran for having tossed out the U.S. dictator, the Shah. You're not supposed to turn the clock back that way. Once the U.S. takes over a province, it's never supposed to be freed, and so they of course, can't stand Iran for that reason. Economically, I think there are many things we can change things. You're exactly right. Things are fluid. We do have free will. We can change our ideas. We can change the future, but there are also economic laws, and what the Federal Reserve is doing in cahoots with the big banks and the big investment banks and so forth, and cahoots with the rest of the government, has been so dangerous, so harmful. There's never been anything like this in the history of the human race where we've had this kind of massive money creation by central banks all across the world. We've got very, very serious trouble ahead. That's destabilizing for the regime as well as for us. So I hope that we can turn it to our benefit in the sense that I hope we more and more, all of us, learn some economics. I hope that we learn something about what the power elite is doing, and we learn what ought to be done versus what they are doing, and why Ben Bernanke is such an unbelievably dangerous public enemy. I mean, and it's not only it was the head of the European Central Bank and the head of the Bank of Japan, and just go down the line. All these central bankers are some of the worst enemies mankind has ever faced. So they're doing horrendous damage to us. But if we can understand why that's bad, why they shouldn't exist, why central banking shouldn't even be here, why we need hard money, sound banking, honest banking instead of the dishonest banking that we have today. We don't need a bankocracy. The banks rule Europe. They rule here. They toss out prime ministers and install their own in Europe. A guy like Mitt Romney has been a tool of the investment bankers, Goldman Sachs and so forth, since he was a young man. So, and of course, Obama got massive support from these investment banks, J.P. Morgan, Goldman Sachs, and all the rest of them. When he was running for office, he still gets massive support. So we need to learn about these people. We need to learn why they're economically so dangerous. But that's the first thing you have to learn. You have to study and just start with Henry Hazlitt's Economics in One Lesson. Start with Murray Rothbard's What Has Government Done to Our Money, or The Case Against the Fed, or Ron Paul's great book on End the Fed. Read these books, and then you'll understand just what our enemies are doing to us. Then we have a chance of defeating them.
I want to go to calls, but let's quantify this. There's two different trains in history. There's the creativity, those that love freedom, those that like being honorable, free association, and they're gangs. Gangs with flags, gangs, writ large, what you were saying earlier, gangs with a flag. And sure, you can have nations that are more pro-liberty that can fight off another tyranny, but then they always end up becoming what they were, organized against. But people need to understand, it's not like we're going to have total victory over corruption, or it's going to have total victory over us unless we give in. Every little battle, every little resistance, demonizing these people right now with their acts, exposing them, exposing police when they're out of control, you know, then puts pressure on the bad ones. And so it's an ongoing battle. Every day is a pitched battle against this corruption.
And we always have to speak the truth. It's so powerful. Just one person speaking the truth, they fear it. They hate it. And so whether we're talking about domestic oppression, international oppression, bankster oppression, crony capitalist oppression, warfare state, police state, TSA, all these things, speak the truth. They fear it. And of course, that's the way you persuade other people too. Speak the truth. Don't be silenced. Don't be silenced. Don't be silent.
Let's talk to Craig in New York. Quick question, and then we're going to break. Craig.
Hello.
Yes, sir. You're on the air, sir. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just got a question about the current presidential situation. Romney, if I remember correctly, on one of the mainline shows, talked about trying to like hunt down people with mental illnesses and cure them. It sounded like hunt them down and kill them or something. But either way, in the Book of Mormon, the Articles of Faith, verse 7, it says, we believe in the gift of tongues, prophecy, revelation, visions, healing, interpretation of tongues, and so forth. To me, a lot of religions do that. So that would kind of mean all believers in God.
I know, I hear your question. Janet Reno said on 60 Minutes that everyone that believes in the second coming of Christ is mentally ill, and now they have the new Freedom Initiative where they want to drug half the kids rolling out. Your take on that?
Well, there was a great article of all places in the New York Times, great because of the information it contained, not because of its orientation, about how doctors are being encouraged to give all kids these psychoactive drugs, Adderall and Ritalin and so forth. And they were, of course, they portrayed the doctors were great, charitable, wonderful, compassionate. They get kickbacks from the drug companies. That wasn't mentioned.
And all kids need drugs.
Yeah, they want to give everybody, put everybody on drugs. Absolutely. Just like they've got the rest of us on fluoride and who knows what else.
Do you understand how dark it is? How far down the line we are? How late it is?
You've got a special event coming up this weekend, don't you, LEW Rockwell?
We do, Alex. It's the 30th anniversary of the Mises Institute, and we're going to be holding a conference on Friday and Saturday at Callaway Gardens in Georgia on war revisionism, on the truth about war, which is obviously an important topic. We have Ron Paul, Judge Napolitano, a lot of wonderful speakers, and if anybody's interested in it, you can go to Mises.org, MISES.org, our website. And also, if you become a member of the Institute with a $50 donation, you can watch this online streaming as well, if you'd like to.
Oh, man, see, I wish I wasn't tied down here running my evil I didn't build it operation, because that's the type of thing I would love to go to. That's the type of thing that I would love to send a crew to be able to come back and have a boil down of. But that's the type of thing everybody should go give $50, because the way you counterbalance the other side, it's not even a counterbalance. I am so sick being someone who loves history because it's so entertaining, and that's why I got into it, and then found out it was actually horrifying to hear how government makes things great and how government health care is great when we know it's a nightmare in Europe. Government always wrecks and ruins everything, and it's so dangerous, and I'm sick of hearing how it's going to fix everything.
Yeah, and of course, then they fix everything with bombs too, right? According, if you listen to them, it's fixed. You know, brought freedom to Libya. Brought, you know, they're bringing freedom by killing people. So we're going to talk about how they lie consistently about their wars, just like they lie about everything else, and just how unbelievably damaging from the standpoint of economic prosperity, freedom, the decent life, civilization itself. These sorts of perpetual wars. The U.S. government engages in perpetual wars. It lies about them. We want to tell the truth.
All I know is I drove home last night at about 9:30 with my wife and children, and I had police rush up behind me 3 times, drive recklessly into the other lane, and they weren't even going somewhere. They just pull off in a gas station, and it was like Race Carville or something. And I know Austin police, and then I saw out in the county police. They aren't that bad compared to some areas, but you could just see the attitude and just government, more and more of them. But they're telling us they're going to do less and less duties, quote, helping us. They're just going to revenue generate.
Well, sure, they're going to give you a big ticket for texting or whatever. I remember hearing Ray LaHood, the transportation guy. What a great name for a politician, right? Ray LaHood. But anyway, somebody called him up. He was on C-SPAN, and they said, you want texting outlawed everywhere by the federal government. What about cops? They text. And he said, oh, well, the cops are specially trained. So
yeah, they're actually passing laws. They passed one in Texas where they're exempt.
Yeah. So, but why? But of course, this is why they become cops, because they become exempt from the law. This is the essential thing to remember about government. It's above the law. It uses the law as a weapon against the rest of us, but the law doesn't apply to us. So the things that are murder for private citizens and should be punished are war for the government. If it's kidnapping for us, it's conscription in the draft for them. If it's stealing for us, why, it's taxation. So the key libertarian insight is the government is not above the law. The moral law applies to the government just like it applies to us. The things that are wrong, Alex, for you and me to do are wrong for people. And just because they're wearing a government suit doesn't change that.
That sounds terrorist. I mean, FEMA told me George Washington was a bad man.
That's right.
Can you believe that in the actual training manuals, and we have video of it, they say George Washington and Thomas Jefferson are bad?
Well, they resisted the government. Can't have that happening.
But I mean, oh man, we're going to go. Sick of the globalist eugenicist control freaks adding poison to your water and laughing as you get sick and die? Start purifying your water with ProPur. My friends, I've done a lot of research, and the best gravity filter out there, bar none, is ProPur, and it's available discounted at Infowars.com. Its filters are silver impregnated to prevent bacterial growth. There's no priming required. It's NSF 42 certified. Optional fluoride filters can reduce fluoride up to 95%. Easy to set up and use. Doesn't require electricity. Purify water from lakes, streams, ponds, and wells. This filter system leaves in beneficial minerals, which is key. Save money by not buying bottled water and avoid BPA that leaches from the plastic. ProPur is the best gravity-fed filter out there. It's what my family uses. Infowars.com already has the lowest price on ProPur. But if you add the promo code WATER at checkout, you get an additional 10% off at Infowars.com. You can also call to order 888-253-3139. Lew Rockwell's our guest. Let's jam in a bunch of calls. Judy in Florida, you're on the air. Go ahead.
Hi, Alex. I had two quick questions, if possible. One is, with all the information, all the facts that are linked to both 9/11 and the underwear bomber, if there was a concerted effort with all alternative media, and it was relentlessly pushed, I mean, all of the facts surrounding those two situations, I mean, if it would not at least open up a fresh investigation. I mean, there's a lot of proof that points to the fact that...
Sure. No, I mean, they're scared of us exposing Oklahoma City, 9/11, the underwear bomber being gotten on the plane, protected. This latest guy that was going to bomb the Federal Reserve. Turns out they protected this moron, Patsy. It's always the same story. Lew Rockwell, comments on that.
Well, all police states employ agent provocateurs. So they try to they pick, some poor boob from Bangladesh, lonely, maybe not too high in IQ. They talk him into planning a bomb. They tell him how to make the bomb, which of course it's just a fake bomb, not a real bomb. They direct him. They say bomb the Federal Reserve, and they protect him from being captured by any of the counterterrorism forces in Lower Manhattan. He gets there to the Fed. He plants the phony bomb. Then they arrest him for terrorism. Well, who's the So just like the old Russian, the Tsar secret police was famous for this. All secret police do this. They create these terrorist incidents in order to scare the people and say, oh, we better give all power to the government. But I think this is not working anymore. I think that latest thing about against the Fed, which I think was aimed at people like us, by the way, Alex. This is why they're picking the Fed as a target, the New York Fed. I don't think it had the effect they want. I don't think people pay attention anymore. They don't look in the closet and under the bed for terrorists anymore like the government would like them to.
Well, sure. I mean, it's like, oh, the poor Fed. I mean, I've predicted they would false flag the Fed. Let's go to Mouse Link in New York. You're on the air, Mouse.
Good day, gentlemen. My ears perked up when you were talking about not voting. It is something that we've been discussing here for the past few weeks, having followed the debates and whatnot. And I was just wondering if you could elaborate a little bit more on that. It seems to be kind of a taboo subject. If you bring that up.
People are shocked when you talk about this. What? Not vote? We're trained from the earliest days in the government schools that it's our duty to partake in the sacrament of the government, which is voting. But first of all, your vote doesn't count. Even if the votes are honestly counted, and who the heck believes that? Your vote doesn't count unless the election's won by one vote. It's a pain in the neck, and the government loves you to vote. It's very, very important that you vote, and people who don't vote bother the government. And if we in the old days, days, we used to talk about what if they held a war and nobody showed up? What if they held an election and nobody showed up? That would be a very revolutionary act. So if we have fewer and fewer people voting, bothers the regime, bothers the government, bothers the media. And by the way, you don't have to go waste your time in some horrible government line in front of a government machine in what's just a facade and just a baloney operation.
But I think their point is, then how do you change the system?
Well, you don't throw it through politics. I mean, politics is the government's game.
Give us a few examples of how you do it. Give us a few examples, Lou.
Well, I think we have to do it by, first of all, just mentally seceding from the government. I mean, you can do things like homeschool your children. That's one great way to do it. But if you just mentally don't give them your consent, if you don't do what they want, if you don't think that they're the source of truth, if you then talk to other people about this, and if you learn yourself the truth about economics, about history, about government false flags, and all the various things you can learn about, then you can be a source of truth and guidance to others. That's the way we change things, by changing minds, not by putting creep A as versus creep B in the White House. I mean, why would anybody think that would make any difference? It doesn't make any difference. If there ever were a president that was any good, believe me, he would not be in office for very long at all.
Lew Rockwell, thank you so much for spending time with us. Sorry to the other callers. Look forward to talking to you again soon. And
thanks, Alex.
Thank you so much.
Visit Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com. When you're on the sites, you can also tune in 24 hours a day to my daily radio broadcast. There's also a free iPhone app to listen to the syndicated radio show when and where you want.